Should Yuta Okotu have helped Gojo in his fight against Sukuna? Well, the short answer is yes, he definitely should have. It's very possible that Yuta's interference would have actually led to a different outcome completely and prevented Gojo from dying the way that he did. Before we get into this though, I think it's very important to discuss why Sukuna actually wanted to use Mahoraga for this fight in the first place. No, I do not think Sukuna needed Mahoraga for this fight, and I think Sukuna knew that as well. Sukuna is just simply a character who loves jujutsu, and he wants to understand as much of it as possible. He wants to be able to do anything. And quite frankly, the fact an ability like Infinity exists that he doesn't know how to bypass without a domain expansion probably presented itself as a really fun challenge for Sukuna. So he used Mahoraga to learn how to beat Infinity without needing a domain expansion. I think the fight would have gone very differently if both parties were trying desperately to kill each other from the very beginning, something I don't think Sukuna was doing. If you have any doubts about that, just look back on the fight against Gojo and see how Gojo is even surprised that Sukuna took so many risks. Gojo admits that Sukuna could have just destroyed his barrier from the inside when he inverted his conditions, but Sukuna decided to be risky, which we know was because he wanted Mahoraga to adapt to Infinite Void. The point at which Yuta decides he's going to interfere though is when Agito and Mahoraga are summoned, and this is past the domain expansion battles where neither parties can use domain expansions anymore. So if Yuta did interfere at this point and end up taking out Mahoraga, it could have had dire consequences for Sukuna. To be clear, no, I am not saying Gojo would have won if Yuta did this. That is not my point. I'm saying Gojo would not have died when and how he did. Although there are still some problems, like can Yuta defeat Mahoraga, and would Yuta have even made it there in time? This video is basically just going to explore what the outcome would look like if Yuta did interfere and did actually take out Mahoraga. In the beginning of chapter 234, Yuta gets off his fat ass to go help Gojo in his fight against Sukuna, and then literally everybody in the room tells him to sit his fat ass back down again because that would be a waste of time. Kashimo has his own reasons, thinking that Gojo's honor should be respected and this battle should be allowed to play out as a 1v1. Although I don't really give a fuck about that, we're here to discuss whether Yuta would be able to change the outcome of the fight, not whether he should due to honor. Although everyone else in the room does actually have a valid reason for Yuta staying, and that's because Yuta would only get in Gojo's way. We know from the way that Kenjaku planned to trap Gojo that his weakness is to have those weaker than him around him while he's fighting. Even if Yuta, the second most powerful sorcerer of the modern age, went to help Gojo in that fight, he's still weak enough to get in Gojo's way. Gojo is so destructive, and to be fair, so is Sukuna, that they would just pose a massive threat to Yuta. At the time, I completely agreed with that argument. I thought it was a fucking stupid idea for Yuta to get off his ass. I think he should have stayed where he was and let everything play out just like he did. But obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and sometimes it can be a bit of a fucking curse. With the power of hindsight, I've concluded that Yuta actually could have changed the outcome of this fight if he had gotten off his ass and done something. He should have ignored his friends and went straight out there to handle Agito and Mahoraga. So now let's switch it up a bit and imagine what would happen if Yuta actually did go out there and fight Mahoraga and Agito. More specifically, what would happen if Yuta went out there and beat Mahoraga and Agito. Due to Yuta's insane cursed energy, Sukuna would almost definitely notice his presence straight off the bat. And it wouldn't take long for Sukuna to figure out that Yuta was going there to finish off Mahoraga and Agito, something that he cannot allow to happen. So Sukuna will probably put in his best efforts to get Yuta away from Mahoraga. As much as I think it would be quite funny to think Gojo would get pissed off that Yuta comes to join him and then just hit him with a purple or some shit, I'm sure he'll be able to accept it. As frustrating as it will be, he'll help Yuta. And all Gojo will need to do while Yuta fights Mahoraga is keep Sukuna away. He will just need to distract Sukuna and only Sukuna. Don't get me wrong, Yuta killing Mahoraga and Agito without Sukuna interfering is definitely a very difficult thing to do. Do I think it's possible for him to pull off? Yes. Do I think it's also possible for him to completely fuck up and then die? Yes. However, we're going to proceed with the assumption that Yuta does manage to kill Mahoraga. If Yuta had gone out there and killed Mahoraga before he had shown Sukuna how to bypass Infinity with throwing a slash that cuts through all of space, then Sukuna would have absolutely no blueprint for beating Infinity. Some people argue that he'll be able to come up with this by himself eventually, although I really don't see the point in that argument. I think that would take way too long. If it wasn't going to take that much longer, then I don't think Sukuna would have as much interest in using Mahoraga as he did. If anything, Sukuna would see it as more of a challenge to make himself come up with the idea. Anyway, Mahoraga has been taken out of the picture and Sukuna now has no blueprint. He can't summon Mahoraga anymore because once a Shikigami has been properly exercised, you can't use them anymore. Now, what should really happen is Yuta should retreat. He should not stay around for the next bit of the fight because he will most definitely get in the way. So the question now is, how would Yuta intervening and killing Mahoraga actually change the outcome of this fight? Well, the obvious answer is that Gojo wouldn't end up lying in a bloody mess in two separate pieces. Mainly because Sukuna just doesn't know how to do the space slash yet. I think the most likely thing to happen is Sukuna will just turn into Heian-era Sukuna without Gojo getting off that purple, because now Sukuna has no reason to take these risks. He has no reason to wait to learn how to do all these things, he now just wants to fucking kill him. This means that the fight is effectively prolonged. They'll just keep going. Gojo isn't dead, they're gonna keep fighting, and he now has to fight Heian-era Sukuna, who we know is physically much more capable at jujutsu due to his second mouth and his second pair of arms, which are there purely for the purpose of just doing constant incantations and hand signs. It's a great way to just optimize your jiu-jitsu. Now it is just down to Gojo versus Heian-era Sukuna. And the only way we know of that Sukuna can beat Infinity without the use of Mahoraga is through a domain expansion. Now, I think it's pretty safe to assume that Gojo can not use domain expansion at this point. He's not healed his brain enough yet, so I'm going to rule him out as being able to counter one. If Sukuna can use a domain expansion, Gojo most likely loses. Although we don't know whether he can actually use a domain expansion yet. We know that turning back into Heian-era Sukuna completely heals Sukuna's body and any physical damage. Although we also know from this entire fight that the brain does not work the same way when it comes to healing. Furthermore, in the chapters following Gojo's death, when the other sorcerers attack, he doesn't even attempt to use domain expansion. Maybe that's because he just wants to have a little bit of fun and he doesn't want to kill everyone there, but I think he genuinely just can't do it yet. I don't think him healing back into Heian-era actually fixed his brain. I think he's going to need a little bit more time. One of my next videos is actually going to be what if Sukuna didn't have Mahoraga in his fight against Gojo and went straight to fighting in Heian-era Sukuna form. Now, you could argue that once Yuta has intervened here, you are left with Gojo versus Heian-era Sukuna. Although it's not as simple as if they started like that from the beginning, because you have to take into account the fact that they can't use domain expansions anymore. If Sukuna can use domain expansion, as we've said, then he most likely wins. If we started the fight from scratch and they could both use domain expansion, then it would be a pretty close fight, although Sukuna definitely has the advantage. But in a fight where you can't use domain expansions, I still think Gojo has a really good shot, and he could absolutely win the fight. I think it's pretty 50-50 to be honest. It really just depends what Sukuna has up his sleeve, which we don't know about, which is the reason why I can't ever say that Gojo is definitely going to win, because I don't know what Sukuna's got. We don't know enough about him, and we do know everything about Gojo. With that being said, I think Gojo would have had a much better chance to win if Yuta had actually got involved and killed Mahoraga. As I said in my Gojo versus Sukuna made simple video, Gojo lost the fight the minute Sukuna saw how Mahoraga threw his slash through space. That was when he lost, because that is when Sukuna learned to overcome Infinity. If Yuta intervened and took out Mahoraga, that would never have happened, allowing the two to keep fighting, and Gojo would have ended up fighting Heian-era Sukuna, and they both couldn't use domain expansions. In order for Yuta to save Gojo's life, however, he has to face one massive obstacle, and that would not be Mahoraga. It would be Kashimo. Kashimo will definitely not let this guy leave without a fight. Obviously, I'll make a video on Kashimo versus Yuta, just for fun, but no, I'm not saying that Kashimo will beat Yuta. I'm saying Kashimo will waste enough of Yuta's time so that he won't get there before Mahoraga throws the slash. In fact, I think the only way that Yuta makes it out of there in time is if Hikari clocks onto what Yuta's doing, and then traps Kashimo in a domain expansion, and they fight out again while Yuta just leaves. The only time I see Hikari actually doing this is if Yuta really did try and leave and Kashimo attacked him. And let's not forget the fact that hindsight is a wonderful thing, and we all agreed that Yuta shouldn't go out there and get in Gojo's way. It would have just been really interesting to see how the outcome changed if he did manage to go and kill Mahoraga. Even though it is a pretty tall order, he'll have to kill Mahoraga, Agito, avoid Sukuna, and get past Kashimo, which I understand is a lot, but he is Yuta Okotsu. Unfortunately though, Gojo is dead, and no, I don't think he's coming back. I will make a video theorizing some reasons why he could come back, but I don't think he will. It's just quite fun to think about it sometimes. And also there'll be much more Yuta content coming along soon, including matchups against Hikari and Kashimo. One of the next videos I'm going to put out will actually be Gojo versus Heian-era Sukuna without Mahoraga, so make sure you stay tuned for that. I know a lot of you have been asking for it, and I think it's a really interesting fight to cover. I know this has been quite a short video, but I really wanted to talk about it because I thought it was pretty interesting. I also wanted to just give a big thank you for all the support I got on my last two videos. I've managed to get over 100 subscribers in a week, which I think is crazy, so thank you very much, you guys. There's nothing I want to do more than just be able to sit around and talk about Jujutsu Kaisen. As always, like and subscribe, and then let me know below if there's any particular videos you want me to make. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.